What up, my dudes? If you guys want to get all my notifications, be sure and bell me on YouTube. I know YouTube's kind of weird. It's got like you can subscribe to somebody, but then you're not going to get all their notifications unless you actually hit that little notification bell. So if you want that, just letting you know, that is there. So if you're one of those kind of people that have ever thought about making a track, or you're a track maker, or you ever wanted to make a track, or you've ever made a track in the past, or anything to do with track making on MX Simulator, you need to watch this video right here, okay? I've been making tracks since I started on YouTube, all right? That was the whole thing that started me on YouTube. I've made 70 tracks that I've actually fully released, but I've probably made 100 plus full-blown tracks in this game. I've just only released like 70 of them. Point being is I've got a lot of time into track making. You know, I understand the ins and outs of it. I understand how things work. I understand the coding and all this other stuff. And I still had no clue about this whole entire aspect here and this whole entire thing that you can do with track making. So where this all came about was I had a problem on my Spencer Turley compound here where I got it all built up, got everything going, and I was getting this weird like laggy frame drop only in certain areas of the track. And this is something I'd never really noticed before, but I was like, what the hell? Like, why is this lagging coming around this one corner, around this one section? I was like, what is causing this? First, I thought it was the decals. I was trying to, like, you know, manage my decals and shit like that. I was trying to do all this stuff, and it still wasn't really helping anything. So I hit up JLV, the creator of the game. I was like, hey, man, you happen to know, like, what might be the issue with, you know, the lag and the kind of weird frame drop that I'm getting in certain areas of the track? And he said, you can go in there and type in, okay, this is big right here, okay, type in when you're on any track, /render stats, okay, this is going to pull up this whole thing over here on the left. This is the stats of, this is all of your numbers of everything you have on the track, okay? This is so important. I cannot believe I didn't know anything about this. I didn't even know you could do this. Like, you know, I always thought it was kind of a guessing game of like, okay, my track's starting to lag a little bit, especially if you're making like a bigger compound track or you're making like a bigger enduro track or whatever. You know, you start kind of noticing that lag and that frame drop on your custom track, and you're trying to figure out why, and you're deleting objects and you're doing all this stuff. This is going to tell you exactly what on your track is either too much, too many, you know, causing lag. This is going to tell you every stat of everything that you have on your track, okay? So if you ever start noticing a lag or a frame drop or whatever, go in there, /render stats, okay? And it'll pull this up over here. It's going to tell you your ground polygons, model polygons, the billboard count, decal count, texture changes, shader, and then it even goes even deeper into all of the like reshading and a road buffering and all that kind of stuff. So this is going to basically, it's like the inner workings of your entire track and how it's working in the game. This tells you so much information that you need to know whenever you're making a track. So this is going to tell you like, okay, if let's just say you're coming around a certain corner and your ground polygon count goes way up in one corner, and what I mean by way up is like in the max I've got on this track is 153,683. But what a lot is, what I've noticed, like what the like real, it starts to kind of frame drop and starts to lag a little bit. So when you get up in the, you know, 240,000, 250,000 ground polygon count, if you're starting to get that on your track, if you're starting to see that number on your track, then you've got way too much terrain going on. You know what I'm saying? That's really what the ground polygons are, is the actual terrain. And what I learned from JLV is if you are having that issue, the best way to fix it is not just take terrain away, but specifically you need to smooth out your rougher edges in your jagged terrain, okay? Because there's something that goes on in this game where if you have too much jagged terrain, it will just completely spike that ground polygon count to the point to where it starts causing that lag and that frame drop issue. And I had a lot of areas on my track kind of off of the track and, you know, in some of the off-track areas where I had a lot of jagged edges. I just didn't really even think twice about smoothing them because it wasn't on the actual on-track, but that was causing the frame drop and the lag just from having too many jagged edges. Because in this game, there's not really a whole lot of, you know, it's got more of that old school terrain system to it. So you don't have like a ton of voxels or polygons or whatever you want to call them. You know, like, so for instance, like if you raise up a mountain or whatever and you don't go in there and smooth it, it's going to be jagged. It's going to have these weird, janky, jagged, spliced looking terrain because there's not enough, like, there's not enough polygons there, or whatever you want to call it. There's not enough terrain there to actually register. You know what I'm saying? And I think part of that is just from it being a game from 2007 and having that really old terrain system to it. Because in a newer game, you can have jagged edges or smooth edges, but not be like the weird, janky, you know, where it's having trouble reading the terrain and it gives you that weird. Let me see if I can find a spot on this track. I bet I still have a spot or two that's kind of looks like that, and I can explain it to you a little bit better. Tried to smooth out as many of them as I could. Let me see here if I can find it a little bit. You can see it a little bit right here. See how it's kind of jagged right on the border of this? The side of that jump right there. Let me come over here a little bit. Even like right through here on the base of this, it's a little bit jagged, right? See how it's kind of like the terrain, it's like having trouble finding where it's actually at. That's basically what it is. Like there's not enough terrain points to meet up properly, and then it creates those weird jagged edge areas. So point being is you want to avoid those at all cost, and doing this whole you know, slash render stats is going to tell you what's actually going on your track. It's going to tell you what you're seeing on screen at that certain time, right? So that's a big deal, and it's also going to tell you if you have too many objects, which are going to be like, you know, model polygons. It's going to tell you if you have too many billboards going on. It's going to tell you all that stuff. It's literally your entire stats to your everything on your track. So this is a really important thing when it comes to track making in this game that I just had no idea about, and thank God I figured it out, and I just had to come out here and really make a video on this and show you guys because it's so important. Especially, a lot of times you don't really run into these problems if you're just making like a little simple supercross track, you know, or whatever. But when you start making the bigger motocross tracks or the bigger compounds or bigger enduro tracks, you're really going to start running into a frame drop lag issue on it if you don't know how to manage all these things. And the only way to know how to manage it is to be able to see the stats on it. So you got to be able to go in there and, you know, slash render stats to be able to even see what you have too much of or too little of, or what you can put more of in, and all that kind of stuff. So this is going to be massive when it comes to the future tracks that I make, because I'm going to be able to do a whole lot more with off-track objects, billboards, layering decals together, doing all that. Because I used to think the decals was causing the issue, but it's actually a lot of times wasn't. I actually don't think it ever was. I think it was more so I just had too many jagged places on the track, and I didn't realize that that would actually cause lag in itself, but that's a big one. It's a doozy, dog. So, you know, this is going to really allow you to manage your track, manage all the stuff you got going on your track, because there's just going to be a limit to everything, you know. So it's kind of what it all comes down to. But a huge track making tip. You really need to know about this if you're going to start getting into track making or start making any sort of, you know, custom track content in this game. Like, you got to know this stuff, dog. It's really big. Just avoid jagged edges at all cost, unless you have to have that one jagged edge on a on-track jump thing or whatever. Even if you go in there and just smooth it just a little bit, you know, just to avoid the weird, janky jagged, like clipping, weird terrain thing, just to avoid just that, you will be way better off as far as that ground polygon count, okay? So this is really important. You guys are going to start seeing a lot more of these super cool, you know, more vibrant off tracks and more varied and more creative off tracks, because now I know I can actually make them without it lagging, because I can figure out what's causing the lag. So you're going to see a lot more of these multi-layered decals where it's like sand and mixed with dirt. You know, it's kind of got the brown and the white gray sand coloration. You're going to start seeing a lot more of these cool mixture decals even coming through over here. It actually gets to a point where it starts getting gray sand coloration, brown dirt, and red clay dirt coloration through it. So you've got 3 different decals layered going through here. Gives it a really cool coloration. So you're going to start seeing me be able to make a lot more interesting decals on track wise, and not feel like I'm overloading the track, because I literally like never overloading the track with decals. The big thing is just the terrain. You know, you got to be careful when you're making crazy jagged edge. You know, and a lot of times with my crazy tracks, there's a lot of that weird, jagged, not typical, you know, straight up and down mountain face. Like, so that's really what I've had to figure out how to improve on here. And yeah, it's just it's a massive thing, man. You need to take this all into account. And it's probably better to look at this crap, you know, when you're at the beginning of making a track, and then midways through making the track, you can kind of start seeing like, okay, getting a little too much terrain going, get a little too much jagged terrain, or okay, I'm getting too many objects on the track, got to tone it down a little bit, you know. And then by the time you get to the end of the track, you don't have to go in there and delete half of the crap or like do all that stuff. It'd probably be better to look at this, you know, the render stats in between making the track, so that you can figure out what's going on while you're in the midst of making it. So either way, I mean, this is one of the biggest like track making tip videos I've ever made right here. This is such a big thing. I'm sure some of you other track makers do know about this, but for a lot of people, I feel like they don't really know about this. I know I didn't have any idea about this or any clue about this. Like I said, I've been making tracks for 5-6 years in this game, 5 years in this game, and I had no clue about this. So I know there's a lot of you other dudes out there that have no clue about this. So either way, just one of those little, you know, commands that you can type in, and it will save your ass, dog. It'll help you a lot on the track making side of it. But either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.